This man bought a Supreme Court justice. Do you understand how rich you have to be to buy a black one on top of that? There's only 2 in stock. And Harlan Crow owns half the inventory. We can all see Clarence Thomas, but he belongs to billionaire Harlan Crow. And that's what an NFT is.
One of the best punchlines there coming at this weekend's White House Correspondents' Dinner from the cozy financial relationship between Justice Clarence Thomas and conservative activist Harlan Crow. And Thomas isn't the only justice with ethics concerns at the moment. There's also Neil Gorsuch and the property he sold to a law firm CEO just 9 days after his Senate confirmation. And now there's Chief Justice John Roberts. Business Insider reporting that his wife made over $10 million recruiting for elite law firms, at least one of whom argued a case before the Supreme Court. The Senate Judiciary Committee is holding a hearing on all of these ethics concerns tomorrow morning. I'm joined now by Melissa Murray, a professor at the New York University School of Law who clerked for Justice Sonia Sotomayor when Sotomayor was a judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. Professor Murray, it's always great to see you. Thank you so much for making time for us. Your reaction to this news about Chief Justice Roberts' wife, is it in the same category as the issues surrounding Justice Thomas and Justice Gorsuch?
Well, let me just say, I think we have to be really careful here. I don't like the idea of suggesting that a Supreme Court spouse can't have a career. Mrs. Roberts had been a lawyer before her husband became the Chief Justice. She took this job as a legal recruiter, ostensibly to avoid any conflicts or the appearance of any conflicts by being a legal recruiter instead of a practicing lawyer. But it seems from the testimony provided by her former colleague that it may be the case that her association with the Chief Justice and her closeness to the Chief Justice was actually very attractive to law firms trying to recruit new talent and to clients who wanted to find a legal recruiter to place them in particular firms. And so, again, it just seems here that there is no actual corruption. No one has said that anything corrupt has gone on or that people have bought favors here, but the appearance seems pretty bad. And again, this is in large part a bad appearance because it comes on the heels of these 2 other allegations of alleged improprieties that haven't been proven to have been actual corruption, but look pretty bad nonetheless.
I think you bring up a very important point, and certainly we don't want to create that perception. But also I think in basic public life, there is a desire for disclosure to reduce the perception of a conflict of interest. And certainly no one is saying that she did anything wrong. But also, there is this lack of transparency about what the court is doing that when it's revealed, it becomes disturbing. And you have Chief Justice Roberts, who has already declined an invitation to appear before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Yes, he sent a letter today responding to some of their questions, but nonetheless, he's not being as transparent as the public wants and deserves about the court.
Well, I mean, this is an institution that is perhaps less transparent than any other branch of government. And I think we're really seeing that. Again, there have been no allegations of corruption. No one has proven that there is corruption here. It's really just the appearance of impropriety, that these associations are too close and the optics are poor for an institution that's supposed to remain outside of the political fray. And again, what we're seeing here is, a failure to disclose some of these things, a failure to disclose or distinguish between actual salary and commissions, or to disclose the nature of a particular property transaction. And I don't think anyone's saying justices can't have friends, they can't have rich friends, they can't sell property, they can't have jobs, their wives can't have jobs. But I think what the public is saying for an institution like this one that really depends on the public trust, that can only happen if there is real transparency and disclosure.
With the Senate Judiciary Committee holding a hearing on this issue tomorrow morning, its chairman, Senator Dick Durbin, said this today about his hope for a bipartisan bill on ethics reform. Watch.
I think we can come up with a bipartisan measure and move forward and say to the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land should not have the lowest standard of ethics in the federal government.
Realistically, even if the Senate passes such a measure, it seems doubtful that it could get through this Republican-led House. But is congressional action the answer here? Is it the only action here, or are there other ways to get the Supreme Court to follow ethics rules similar to the executive branch in Congress, or perhaps even lower courts?
Well, again, I think it's unlikely that anything, even a bipartisan measure, is going to get through the House and then on to the Senate to become an actual law here. But there are other things that Congress can do. Congress sets salaries for the Supreme Court. It also sets the court's budget. I mean, if Congress really wanted to put it to the court and they were serious about ethics reform, they could withhold the budget for the Supreme Court, make them do their work by themselves without the help of clerks or support staff or anything like that. And I think we probably see some movement from the court on that front. But we might also see movement simply because there has been so much public attention to this. And that's something the court, and especially the Chief Justice, cannot like. We have seen a story about the Supreme Court almost every day for the last 2 weeks. And that's in addition to the reporting about efforts to get close to certain justices by conservative interests that we've heard about over the last couple of months. So it's been a pretty bad news cycle for the court.
There was a recent poll that finds 62% of Americans, nearly two-thirds, they have very little or no confidence in the Supreme Court. Lay out the significance of this for the court's legitimacy in the eyes of the public.
The court absolutely depends on public opinion for its legitimacy. It's not like Congress or the president. It doesn't have the power of the purse. It doesn't have the power of the sword. The only thing that makes us obey the court and heed its decisions is our sense that the court is doing the right thing. The court is a legitimate institution. Once the public stops thinking of the court in that way, then there's really no reason to abide by its decisions. So the court's legitimacy is absolutely everything.
Melissa Murray, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciate your insights.